Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton spar over economic proposals. Nigeria's First Lady launches an initiative for women and children in need. And why are U.S. Olympians turning to an ancient Chinese healing practice? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. This is Africa 54. Zambian voters head to the polls on Thursday to elect a new president. The race between incumbent Edgar Lungu and opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema is very tight. Hichilema, one of Zambia's wealthiest businessmen, has accused Lungu's government of restricting campaigns and raising concern that the polls will not be free and fair. The leader of the African Union Observer Mission, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, says violence has decreased following the 10-day suspension of campaigning.
It's normal in Africa because we are just practicing democracy for opposition parties to always feel that the ruling party will use all the state resources and power because they control the security, they control public media and others, to create an environment that is not too good for them. But from the report we got from our long-term observers, yes, these fears are there. Yes, there are certain incidences that point to that, but we still believe that the elections can still be conducted in a manner that will be satisfactory.
Lungu has been in power in the Southern African nation since winning an election in January 2015 following the death of his predecessor Michael Sata in October 2014. The largest number of electorates in Zambia are women, and now a women lobby organization is working hard to change the Zambian society's perspective of women in politics. Reporter Jessie Chisi has more.
Non-governmental organization Zambia National Women's Lobby Group came into existence for the purposes of championing social discrimination and injustice in a male-dominated social culture. Zambia National Women's Lobby Group are advocating for the end of discrimination by pushing for equal rights legislation and policy implementation. We hear from Julia Chibuta, Executive Director of Zambia National Women's Lobby Group, why she feels women are not well represented in the society.
Women's Lobby is a women's organization. It was formed in 1991 to promote women's participation in decision making. The reason why it was formed was because of the fact that we have very few women in governance who are participating in governance. And it was formed to encourage the women to be participating in various decision-making processes.
Between January 1991 and December 1997, there were 42 registered political parties in Zambia. This was perhaps the highest recorded number of parties since the transition to multi-party system began. One political party emerging from 2001 has survived to this day under the leadership of a strong woman. She is the only woman that has stood the test of time as a contester for the top job on the Zambian soil. She has inspired young political aspirants like Bumba Malambo, who gives a reflection on how women are demonized in becoming politicians.
In our society, they've not accepted that women can climb up the ladder of leadership. That has been one of my challenges. And looking at my age, sitting on such a big seat, considering that my ward is one of the biggest in this country, it's been really hard to convince the elder people who think leadership is for older men.
Reasons they're not giving their massive votes to female contenders are in the words of Sela Longwe, chairperson of non-governmental organization coordinating committee.
For some reason, politics have maintained male domination because of the type of politics we have. They are very patriarchal in nature, they meet very funny hours, and they are rowdy, and they are also very violent. So women don't want to put themselves in a position where they are in danger, so they refrain, of course.
We hear public views about women being in leadership position.
We cannot allow a woman to become president because God first made a man to lead the world.
Zambia is not ready to have a woman president because development came late. This is why we need a man.
If you think the woman is just meant for the kitchen, then you are mistaken, because like we said, the women are the majority in our population, all over the world, wherever you go.
Men have had a bad perspective concerning a woman, but I think it's high time we stand up and vote for it.
In present-day Zambia, women are in charge of important institutions and decision-making positions that have been male-dominated since the 1960s. One such example is the first ever female vice president, Enonge Winner. My name is Jessie Chisi, reporting for Voice of America in Lusaka, Zambia.
U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is once again the center of controversy after remarks he made during a campaign rally on Tuesday. Speaking in Wilmington, North Carolina Tuesday, Trump said Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton would appoint liberal Supreme Court judges who would take away Americans' constitutional right to own guns.
All Hillary Clinton has to offer is more of the same: more taxes, more regulations, more bureaucrats, more restrictions on American energy and on American production. More of that. If you were a foreign power looking to weaken America, you couldn't do better than Hillary Clinton's economic agenda.
Trump's opponents immediately seized on his comments, interpreting them to mean that Clinton, all the judges, should be assassinated. But the billionaire real estate developer denied any thoughts of violence when he spoke, telling Fox News that Clinton simply wants to leave Americans unprotected in their homes. Clinton was in Miami, Florida, where 4 new cases of the Zika virus suspected to have been spread by mosquitoes have been reported.
And his tax plans will give super big tax breaks to large corporations and the really wealthy, just like him and the guys who wrote the speech, right?
She urged Republican leaders to immediately call the House of Representatives into special session and pass a bill funding the fight against Zika. The Senate has passed a Zika funding measure, but the House recessed before it could pass one and reach a compromise with the Senate on a final bill. One of the world's most volatile regions is now emerging as one of the fastest growing economies. Joining us from New York is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Jill, how are you today?
Doing well, thank you, Esther. So last week we featured a report on the Universal African Passport, which would allow for more liberal and open economic policies across the continent in an effort to increase trade among the states and exports around the world. We also looked at many studies from groups like the IMF, World Bank, and Trademark East Africa that showed countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda are benefiting from progressive reform. Interestingly, the countries that make up the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia, are emerging as economic leaders, despite regional volatility that they've seen over the past 25 years, with Ethiopia leading the way.
You know, Jill, that's very interesting because a lot of what we hear from the Horn of Africa is a little chaotic. But what is Ethiopia doing right that has increased this cross-border trade? And has that helped increase the regional growth in the Horn of Africa?
Well, according to the World Bank, Ethiopia's economy has experienced strong and broad-based growth over the past decade, averaging 10.8% per year compared to the regional average of 5%. Expansion of the services and agricultural sectors account for most of the growth. Private consumption and public investment explain the demand-side growth, with the latter assuming an increasingly important role in recent years. Ethiopia has learned it cannot flourish in isolation and must interact with its neighbors, if for nothing else so that the landlocked country can reach the sea. A study in African business points out that Djibouti and Ethiopia are doing a great job together, and that's because there's infrastructure integration between the two, lots of trade, and the governments are working towards a common agenda for developing a long-term vision.
And Jill, it does sound like the regional trading blocs are now beginning to make a lot of sense on the continent of Africa.
Well, with anything, economic challenges do exist, especially in Africa, where many nations have gained independence just in the past 20 to 30 years. Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia in 1993, following one of the longest-running civil wars in African history, close to 30 years, and legacy disputes still exist. Relations between Ethiopia and Somalia are not as bad, but they are not that cordial either. That said, I am cautiously optimistic about the Horn of Africa bloc. Regional groupings have more clout, and as some suggest, could one day be the basis of a continental free trade area, which brings us back to the concept we spoke about last week of a universal African passport.
Jill, fantastic reporting there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill Malandrino is Africa 54 business correspondent, reporting live from our New York studios. The images from the Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro have been strikingly beautiful. But underlying all that beauty is great turmoil as Brazil is in the grip of a crippling political and economic crisis. Ordinary Brazilians are feeling the pinch, especially those who live in the Rio slums called favelas. VOA's Jeff Swickard reports from Rio on the struggle Brazilians are facing in the midst of the Olympic Games.
Huberto Souza spent most of his life renting beach chairs to tourists on Copacabana Beach. Then in October 2010, he decided to open a bar in the favela Cantagalo, where he was born and raised.
I always wanted to work for myself rather than to work for others because I'm lazy and I don't want a boss getting on my nerves. And this is why I would be able to choose my own hours, earn my own money, instead of earning it for someone else.
Known in the neighborhood as the King, Huberto opened the King's Castle, and business took off. 2010 was a unique moment in Brazilian history. The economy was booming, and many Brazilians moved out of poverty and into the middle class. Between 2003 and 2013, the median household income grew by 87% in real terms. But the good times didn't last.
The good times were when the middle-class people from down there would come and socialize with the people from the favela, and it was cool because it was a mix of those people. That was the best time, but it started to drop off about 2014, and people would say they don't have the money.
Brazil's economy hit a wall. Some blame rising debt and cuts in government spending. Others think of it as a convergence of economic forces, cuts in spending, consumption, and investment. Blame aside, Brazilian economist Rodrigo Magalhães says the impact was felt hardest among people who had recently moved up into the middle class.
When the recession began, it broke the expectation of these people because in the last 10 years they had seen the situation steadily getting better. And then it's all collapsed, you know.
Public services like hospitals and public schools also have been hit hard. Here at the Amaro Cavalcante School in Rio, the sign on the gate says the struggle has only just started. Across Brazil, teachers like Fabiola Camargo have gone on strike, and students have been occupying schools for weeks.
We have not had a raise since 2014. The occupations are supporting the strikes just as much as the strikes are supporting the occupations because they both were wanting improvements in education. It is as if the federal government and the city of Rio wants to stop investing in schools.
Unemployment in urban areas is reaching 8%, and Brazil's GDP is expected to dip another 2% this year. Economists don't see any quick solution, a reminder that while the favela Cantagalo may have a beautiful ocean view, the outlook isn't always pretty. Jeff Swickard, VOA News, Rio de Janeiro.
A recent business forum here in Washington gathered African business owners, American officials and entrepreneurs to discuss how the U.S. and Africa can improve business relations. I spoke with Renee Sanders, a former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and asked her to weigh in on President Barack Obama's contribution in improving the way America does business with Africa.
As regards to business, I think that President Obama has done a really good job in really having Americans focus on Africa as a place to do business. His upcoming forum in September will be the second of its kind. And I think that what came out of the last one, there are really two messages. One, that American investors are interested in Africa, and two, is to let African nationals and African businesses know that there is a focus now on Africa business from the U.S. We have big business there, which is great. We want business to business. We want foreign direct investment between the two continents. But we also want SMEs, who are the next generation of business leaders, to not only hear what they're saying, but also participate. So I'm really hoping this year that they will have 10 or 15 seats reserved just for CEOs of Africa SMEs.
Ngozi Bell works with Africa diaspora businesses. She says while it is important that big businesses participate, it is vital to include business leaders in the diaspora.
But those in the diaspora understand the business practices here in the U.S. They understand how it works. They also understand the business practices in the nations that they're in. So having them be part of those dialogues a lot more frequently will make a huge difference. With Obama's goal to help power the continent in such a significant way, that in of itself is going to change the way business is done. You know, business owners are not looking for anybody to handhold them or help them do their business. They're just looking for you to create the right infrastructure. The whole initiative around trade, around AGOA, having renewed AGOA and making that available for people who are looking to trade both within the U.S. and with nations on the continent is extremely important. What it does is it creates credibility. Africans want to be regarded as credible business people.
The forum was a scene setter for the upcoming U.S.-Africa Business Summit that will be hosted by President Barack Obama on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York next month. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, Nigeria's First Lady launches an initiative to combat malnutrition. Stay with us.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today, we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Welcome back. Aisha Buhari is the First Lady of Nigeria, and she is urging the U.S. and other Western nations to help women and children facing starvation in the northeastern part of Nigeria. Mrs. Buhari was recently in Washington, D.C., where she met with aid and relief organizations. She also stopped by VOA and sat down for a one-on-one interview with our Peter Claudy.
So how does it feel to be the First Lady of Nigeria, the mother of the nation, as they call her?
Yeah, maybe before it may sound exciting being the First Lady, but when you are really into it, you know that it's very stressful. No more excitement, I think.
I know there's no official, title or office,
yeah.
But how challenging is it?
Quite challenging. Without having any constitutional role to play, and people have been trooping in, complaining, left, right, and center, and there's nothing much you could do. It's quite, I don't know.
Well, you know how difficult it's been for Nigeria when it comes to Boko Haram, although significant achievements have been made when the military launched different offensives, followed by instructions from your husband, Mr. President. Chibok girls were abducted. It's been over 2 years now. When you meet their parents? What do you tell them? As a mother, you know how it feels. What do you tell them?
It's quite emotional meeting them, and all of us are mothers. We feel their pain, and in the process of making them feel a bit comfortable before the girls will be rescued, I wrote my book 2 years before my husband came to power. I wanted to sell it and use the proceeds to establish a health farm. And because of what happened, and I feel for them, I decided to give the proceeds to make the parents feel a bit comfortable and also to show them how much we care for them.
I heard you have a passion of educating adults.
Yeah.
What efforts are you making to revive that?
Already we have Adult Education Commission. That's a government agency that's established mainly to take care of adult education or to educate adults. And we see that the root causes of all these crises, unrest, is a lack of education. So that's why I'm now working with the agency and the Ministry of Education to make sure that we revive the adult education centers that we used to have in villages. And I'm sure by the time we revive them, it will make a huge difference in the society.
What about the women empowerment in Nigeria? I know you are passionate about that. What about it? How are you going about doing it?
Yeah, federal government has agenda on that specifically. Through the Ministry of Women Affairs, they have, I think, over 1.3 billion or 1.7 billion naira to be given to women to empower them at different levels.
What about the child rights, abuses, among other issues?
Yeah, they're all there. I think it's part of our campaign strategies that's making sure that we feed children in school, in which I myself and the Vice President are always working very hard to make sure that and they have started the feeding program in schools to make sure that those that are in school should be retained. Those that are not enrolled should be enrolled. Even as a result of giving 1 hot meal in the school, it will encourage them, because they always used to be on the street, like from morning to evening, hawking, looking for what to eat. If they can be given a hot meal in the school, I think it will go a long way in retaining them in schools.
So how would you go about looking for funds to support them? Because everybody is complaining there are no money for anybody. How do you do that?
Yeah, there's no money, but if we can block the leakages that used to happen, we'll get a lot of money to do basic things. Not that we don't have the money is being embezzled. But I think that's the end of embezzlement in Nigeria.
That was quite emphatic, an end of embezzlement in Nigeria.
Course,
why do you say that? Why so confident?
Yeah, because I know that this government was a collectively, the government of change, it was a collective effort government. So the people should continue monitoring the budgets of the ministries. Why a certain amount of money is budgeted for this, and it must carry out its activities based on what they have budgeted for. So people should continue monitoring.
What would be your message to Nigerians who have been complaining about policies that appear they say not to be working because they don't have money in their pockets, finally?
They don't have money in their pockets?
That's what they say.
I don't know. I'm not sure of that. I'm not a government official, but I think if people can stand up for their rights to make sure that the money budgeted for certain projects are being used for that purpose, I think it will bring an end of, what do you call it, corruption. When we tackle corruption, I think our problems are solved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. What are those circular bruises on U.S. Olympians? We'll explain after the break.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Ethiopia, Amnesty International reports that police killed several dozen protesters this weekend in protest across the country. In Nigeria, Boko Haram appoints new leader Abu Musab al-Barnawi beginning to show divisions under new leadership and military pressure from Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and Nigeria. In South Africa, conservation workers saved the life of a baby rhino by giving it CPR. Finally, in Nigeria, thousands of children displaced by Boko Haram attacks have been reunited with their families using the Red Cross tracking system. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Every song has a different meaning to each person that hears it and interprets it differently. Border Crossings is unique in that it lets the listeners decide what we're playing. But we bring in guests so that our audience has access to some of the biggest names in pop music today. And we reach out to the audience each and every day in different ways.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Why did some U.S. athletes have dark spots on their bodies? The marks are caused by an ancient Chinese practice called cupping. During the therapy, cups are placed on the section of the body in need of repair to create suction. The method is said to draw out any toxins, mobilize blood flow, soothe sore muscles, and even help cure insomnia. Cupping therapy can be traced back over 6,000 years to ancient China, and it also has a long history in the Middle East and Egypt. Next up, shaken but not stirred, and with vinegar, please. Vinegar is back on the menu when it comes to making cocktails. Called shrubs, these cocktails have a mix of sweet and sour ingredients, including vinegar, and they're appearing on cocktail lists in bars all over Los Angeles. The combination of sugar and vinegar and fruit is said to enhance and improve the taste of alcohol. Shrubs dates back to the pre-colonial United States. And finally, posing in a Cairo street is all in a day's work for this young Egyptian. But it isn't being snapped for an ad campaign or a fashion magazine. He's part of a trend in Egypt known as famous people. He's among a growing number of young men who are involved in the Egyptian street style scene, snapping their looks and sharing them with their thousands of followers on social media. More than 1 million young Egyptians are part of the online fashion trend that is turning unknown locals into social media stars. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. Here's a story about Apple's new iPhone 6 and how it works for purchases.
Secure. With the iPhone 6 NFC or near-field communication chip, iPhone users will be able to make secure payments at hundreds of stores by simply waving their phones. But recent surveys suggest the majority of Americans are still wary of using cell phones to make purchases.
Secure means something is free from harm or danger. Apple says people can make secure purchases with its new phone.
The company says credit information will be safe.
A secure place means people have to get approval to come in or go out.
Now, when you hear the word secure, you will know what this news word means.